Thank you so much for being here. It's our third night of Real Lives 2017, and you are very welcome here. My name is Callum. I'll be doing the interview and a short talk later tonight. And we are very pleased throughout Real Lives to have different guests with different stories, each one of them unique, but each one of them also impacted by Jesus. So let me tell you a bit how tonight's going to work. In just a minute, I'm going to introduce Martha. We're going to come up here, have a chat for about 40 or so minutes. Then there will be a 10-minute break with more wonderful live music from Tom and Leela. And also a chance for you, if you want to refresh your drinks, get snacks, go to the loo, and also if you want to buy one of Martha's cookbooks, go for it. Martha will be, at the end of the evening, signing, giving her autograph for those who want to, so do stick around for that and do grab her book during that 10-minute break. So after during that 10-minute break, I will then give a short talk explaining Christian faith and talking about a character in the Bible whose name is also Martha, and they have a few things in common. So, without further ado, our guest this evening, Martha Collison, was a Great British Bake Off quarterfinalist, and she is a wonderful person. We're very excited to have her. Thank you so much for coming. Martha, let's give her a hand.
Thank you very much. Oh, wow.
So exciting to have you here. I'm a Great British Bake Off fan myself, and yeah, living the dream now.
These are amazing armchairs.
Yeah. They are very comfortable, aren't they?
Well, like
Yep. Now, Martha, first of all, I read somewhere that you applied for Bake Off procrastinating from doing schoolwork. Is that true?
That is very true.
Yeah.
It was kind of, everyone knows that time after Christmas, but before you go back to, I was in year 12, so before you go back to college, and it was, you don't really want to tell yourself you actually have to do any real work. So it was us after Christmas, and I was like, what can I do that means I don't have to revise for my chemistry exams? And I found the form online and thought, you know what, I love this show. I love baking, why not? Let's do it. And I didn't tell my parents, so I thought they'd be really annoyed that I'd wasted a whole day filling out this form. And yes, I submitted it, and I thought, nothing is going to come of this. It's like a drop in the ocean, but that was fun to do.
Yeah.
And little did I know.
Yeah, and your parents clearly let you go for it.
Yeah, well, they were kind of had to, I guess. Yeah. Well, I remember the day that, so they kind of phone you up and say, oh, we'd love to interview you, and because I hadn't told my parents what I was doing,
all right.
I'd gone back to school and it was mock exams that I was revising for, so they're a bit less important, you can kind of not revise for those, but I didn't do very well. I didn't do very well in the mock exams, as you can imagine, from applying for Bake Off instead of studying. Yeah. And on the same day that I failed my mock exams, I also failed my driving theory test, so it was a really terrible day. And my dad called me up and he was like, Martha, there's some people on the phone from Love Productions and they'd like to talk to you about Bake Off. And I was like, he was like, do you know anything about this? I was like, well, let's not talk about anything else that's happened today. Let's focus on this. And then that was the start of a really exciting journey.
Yeah, amazing. So, Bake Off, what's it like in the tent?
Oh, it's actually really exciting. I'm a massive fan of the show myself, and I was before I went on it. And I was really worried that I'd get into the tent and find that everything was not really real. It sounds really stupid, but I was just, when I knew I was on it, but I had never seen anyone. You don't meet Paul and Mary until you actually get into the tent. So I was like, what if, no one really cares about baking, or it's all smoke and mirrors, and Paul and Mary aren't really there or anything, I don't know.
Mary Berry's really mean.
Or just everyone, but luckily everyone is very true to themselves, and everyone really, really cares about baking, and it was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
But I was really worried that it wasn't, but I can confirm that it is fantastic.
Amazing. Now, you must have been quite a good baker, obviously, to get on the show. So were you really into cooking and that kind of thing growing up, or how did you get into baking?
Yeah, I was actually. I love food and I love cooking, and as I grew up, I kind of developed a real passion for it. And people always ask me, oh, your mum, and they always say to my mum, you must be a great baker. And my mum's really embarrassed by the fact that she is not. She's an amazing person. She does good cooking, but baking is really not her thing. She didn't enjoy it. Every birthday cake that I had growing up, most birthday cakes I had growing up was a Jamaica ginger cake shaped into the letter, the number of my age, which is delicious anyway, but from the packet shaped into a 7 or a 9 or whatever. But it was amazing, and it's not something that comes from my family, but I think I realized when I got to about age 8 that I really wanted to bake, I'd like to eat fresh cakes. I thought, I know, I'll make them. So I started going through kids' cookbooks. I had one called Roald Dahl's Revolting Recipes that I really enjoyed because I used to love reading, and I used to love, so I kind of combined the two. And then when I got into secondary school, food technology, I found it amazing that they would actually let me cook as a lesson. I just couldn't believe that was a thing. So I used to really enjoy that, and I learned a lot from that as well.
There you go. So in Great British Bake Off, if I understand it right, it's quite intense, isn't it? I mean, they roll through and kind of whole weekends and things like that. What was it like, especially as you were 17?
Yeah, I was 17. It is a really intense process. I hadn't really accounted for that when we applied. They were like, it is long hours, and they put you through all these auditions, and even that's quite tiring. And then you have to go and see a psychotherapist as part of the audition process, and then you're kind of thinking,
yeah.
what if I sign myself up to now?
Right.
But it's fine. I think it's just a check, whatever. But you get into the process and you go down on a Friday night and you stay in a hotel. And because I was only 17, all of this stuff was new to me. I'd been away from home on school trips, but I'd never kind of independently gone and stayed in a hotel on my own for 2 days.
Right.
And it was really odd to suddenly have that secret lifestyle. Another thing about it is that you couldn't tell anyone apart from people who absolutely needed to know. So my parents knew, my sister knew, teachers at school knew, but not all of them, just the ones that taught me, and then my best friend knew, and no one else did. And it was the biggest and most difficult secret to keep, especially because you don't know how many weeks you're going to be missing for, because if you could go out in week 1, then there's no point telling anyone really that you've done it, so you just kind of require it.
And how does this work with school as well?
Yeah, it was kind of, I guess, lucky and unlucky that most of the filming process fell over my study leave period for my AS exams. So technically it was good because no one really noticed that I was missing, but it was bad because I definitely wasn't studying. But yeah, I remember going to, the first 2 weeks were at the weekend and before study leave, and then the middle 5 or 6 weeks were over study leave, and then the last 3 weeks, 7, 8, and 9, and 10, but I wasn't in the finals, so it was fine. But I knew they were back when I was back at school again, when you go back after your exams in year 12. And I remember saying to school, I was like, there is a small chance that I might not be here, when I come, that I might still be in it when I come back to school after exams, but no, I'm not going to be in it week 7. Don't be crazy. And I just remember having to send them this email that was like, I'm really sorry, but I can't be at school on Friday. And they just were like, oh, okay, great, because they hadn't been I can't tell them how I'm doing, so they didn't know that I was still in over the whole study leave or anything. So it was really lovely to have this secret bubble, but it was really exhausting. Part of the process, I think. That's always one of the reasons I say when people get really emotional about their bakes. It's not really because we obviously really care about them, but at the same time we are physically exhausted. So anything that goes wrong is just like, oh gosh, I just can't cope right now. We kind of arrive down on the Friday night and then we stay. They kind of get you up at 5 a.m. on the Saturday. Then you film all day until the kind of 8, 9. Then you do the same again on the Sunday. And week after week after week of doing that, and then living a secret double life for the rest of the week, and trying to practice these 5 or 6 hour challenges in secret. It just really catches up with you. And I remember by week 6, I was just like, I am so tired. I could barely even keep my eyes open.
Wow, that does sound exhausting just listening.
Yeah.
At the same time, you were 17, and I think the second youngest contestant was 31. They're all in their 30s, 40s, and 60s. I don't know, if I was in my 40s, 50s, or 60s and a 17-year-old was continuously going and studying for their exams, I'd be a bit annoyed. I'd want to turn off your oven or something. You clearly did well.
I'm glad they didn't do that, though. They were really nice to me. I was because when you find out you're on the show, they don't tell you everyone else who's on the show. You have to wait until you meet them all in the first week. So you have a couple of weeks before when you know and you don't know. And you kind of get into your head this demographic of what you expect people will be like and blah, blah, blah. And in all of the other series, there's been loads of people in their 20s or whatever, students. So I thought, oh, it'll be fine. I know I'm young, but I won't be really young. I got there and I remember meeting everyone and going around the circle and just being like, okay, everyone else has kids. Or grandkids. And I was just like, oh my word, everyone here is old enough to be my parent, which is a bit weird. But they were actually amazing, and it was lovely to feel really taken in under their wings. And actually they did treat me, even though I I felt like I was quite naive. And as soon as I met them, I thought, there's no way actually that I can compete against these people because they've got heaps more experience than me, and some of them have been baking for like 60 years, and I'm just not. I've only been alive for 17 years. So yeah, there was that element of it, but it's kind of weird how we all bonded together because you go through this shared experience that no one else knows what it's like. You become like a little, it sounds really cliche, but kind of like a family, especially when you can't tell anyone else what's going on, but we have our little WhatsApp group where we can discuss what happened that week, and it was actually really reassuring.
Yeah, amazing. And what's it like, Mary Berry and Paul Hollywood? Is Paul as intimidating as he seems?
He is pretty intimidating.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're actually really nice. Mary especially, I think she is very missed in the new series because she is just so lovely. She always finds something nice to say about what you've made, even if it's, it's awful. I remember turning up some things being like, "This, I know how bad this is," but she'll be like, "Oh, I like the way you've drizzled the icing," and it's just nice. Like, you know that she doesn't really mean it, but it's just, you just feel that you have something to cling on to. I feel like in the new series it can be a bit brutal sometimes, and I'm glad that I wasn't there because I probably would have just cried.
Yeah. What were some of the other highlights being in the tents and that whole experience? Anything that stood out?
I think after the first few weeks were a bit stressful just because I was just like, I really don't want to be the first or the second person to leave. And after that, I was fine. So as soon as I got through the second week, I was like, I can relax now. I've done better than I thought I would do. I haven't embarrassed myself yet. Everything is fine. There are loads of highlights. I mean, just getting to spend time in where the tent is. It's in this like beautiful country house that you don't normally get to spend time in. I just remember sitting there sometimes. So whilst it's really intense when you're in the tent, there's quite a lot of waiting for stuff to happen in TV that I'd never witnessed before, but they'll kind of be like, right, you're done, now you've got 2.5 hours to just wait until we get to the next bit, and you'll be like, okay, so there's quite a lot of downtime where you're just like exploring or sat down, especially in the summer, sat outside in Welford Park I just remember looking around and contemplating like, what am I doing here? This is so exciting. And especially as the weeks go on and you've done all right, and I was really proud of where I got to. I really didn't expect to get to the quarterfinals at all, and I was just completely blown away by the whole experience. And I guess the real highlight is what's come afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you made the quarterfinals. You won the technical challenge twice, I think.
I did. I feel like you remember this better than I do.
I did research a bit.
Amazing.
That has to be said. Got to do this for an interview.
They were proud moments.
Yeah, amazing.
I actually really loved the technical challenges. Everyone always was like, they must be the most horrible thing, but I always found them the best bit because I'm a proper food geek and I used to love reading recipes and getting into different things, and a lot of the other challenges kind of really rely on practice. So if you haven't had much time in the week, which most weeks I didn't have much time because I had a couple of exams thrown in the mix, sometimes I'd practice like once or twice and you'd arrive and there'd be some people there like, oh, I've only made it 6 times this week. And you're like, oh, great. I have not made it a single time and it gone well, so,
Yeah.
And then I felt like with the technical challenge, no one had practiced it, so everyone was just in exactly the same boat. And I really liked that because it showed who really knew what they were doing, I guess.
And is there a lot of kind of peeking, see what other people are doing, that kind of?
Kind of. Well, the thing with the technical challenges I found weird from week 1 is that you realise that because obviously it's a TV programme where you're not all there baking in silence, they make us tell the camera what we're doing, but the benches aren't really that far apart. So if the cameraman comes up to you and says, so tell me, have you made this before, Martha? Like, have you got any tips? You can't just not say anything.
Right.
So the person at the front of the benches will then be like, yes, I've made these a few times, the secret is do this, and we're all like, oh, great. Because obviously we have to be vocal, so it kind of just passes itself through that way, but if you've got a real good tip, you just have to not share it.
Yeah.
Do it in secret. It's like, I remember one week we were making Florentines, and it just said put chocolate on the back of them, and I remembered that they have that little wiggle across the back, and I was like, I'm literally not going to say this out loud because I know that a lot of people don't know this, so I just was like behind my bench with a fork, like really quickly doing it. And I remember Mel came up to me, she was like, I think you're hiding something, but I think it's right. I was like, okay, great. No one copy.
Well done. So you've got this intense kind of period of a few months where you're going every weekend and some weekdays as well, doing all this filming. And nobody knows about it back home, basically, except for a few close confidants. So when it comes on TV, it must be did a lot of your friends first find out by watching it, or?
Yeah, they did. A lot of it came out when the first advert came on, and it was a bit like, oh my God, I'm just seeing the advert. But yeah, it was really difficult keeping it a secret, actually, because I go to church on a Sunday most Sundays, and suddenly I was missing for 8 Sundays in a row.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't really like, I have to be there, but my family were at church with me, and they just had to be like, people were like, so where's Martha these days? And they're just like, oh, she's doing a food thing, is what they generally went with. But after a couple of weeks, people were just like, is she okay?
She has the plague.
We haven't seen her in a few months. But as soon as I could tell everyone, it was actually like a massive weight had lifted, because suddenly I didn't have to lie to everyone all the time about what I was doing, or kind of stretch the truth in little ways. And it was weird. People understood suddenly. They were like, because my teachers knew. They were especially nice to me. So, for example, like they'd collect the homework, and they'd be like, oh, just don't worry about Martha's. And other people in the class would just be like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, how are you doing this? Why are they being so nice to you? Because I remember them actually coming up to me and being like, don't revise for your maths exams, it's fine. We'll just pick it up afterwards, because we know that baking is your passion, and this is the real big thing for you, and we could just do all the exam stuff afterwards. So I was like, great, thanks very much. Never been told in my life not to, just don't worry about revising. Like, okay.
Amazing. My teachers never let me just play football.
So I remember everyone at school in that period being a bit like, well, it's not really fair. It's very favouritist. And then as soon as it came out that I was on it, they were all like, that's where you were. That's what was happening. We understand now.
Yeah.
And it was a massive kind of burden that lifted off me all of a sudden. But then a whole new thing began. So it was kind of like the beginning and the end at the same time.
Yeah. And you mentioned church just now. So you grew up going to church?
Yeah, I did. So I've been grown up quite heavily involved in church. And I actually found it, especially with Bake Off, a massive support network. It's always, again, it's like the cliche family thing, but actually when you suddenly appear on TV for the first time and everyone feels like they know you and everyone kind of acts like they're your best friend, there was one place where I knew they just knew me for who I am, and they just would always be real with me and not get like swept up in all of the like, oh my word, Martha.
Yeah.
Because at school it was hard. I mean, I went back into year 13 and I had a whole year to go, and suddenly like I'd walk around the corridors that I'd been in like 2 weeks ago, and all of the year 7s would like fall silent. And it was like royalty. Everyone would just be silent in the halls, and I'd just walk through like, I'm just on TV. It's not like, it's cool. Like, I thought it was cool, but at the same time I was like, it doesn't. That only lasted for a couple of weeks, and they started heckling, which was a bit less nice. I preferred the silence. It was like, Martha, follow me on Instagram. I was like, okay. I grew up in a big school, so it was a bit difficult to suddenly go from being just like anonymous year 12 student to like suddenly everyone knowing. It's a really interesting life change. But.
So, what was it like at your school? Obviously, suddenly people going silent and wanting you to on Instagram. But what was it like as a whole? You're suddenly on TV. Suddenly everyone knows you.
Yeah. It's very surreal, and when I watched it, because we don't see any of the kind of edits or clips beforehand, when you sit down and watch the show, it's the first time we see it, and it's only an hour long, obviously, and we filmed for 2 days, so you have no idea which bits they're going to use, and because you always remember, oh, I said that, and I shouldn't have said that, or I did that, and I wish I'd never done that, and often those bits don't even make it, because it's just a bit embarrassing. But you kind of sit on the edge of your seat, like, what if this bit goes in, or I'm made to look bad, or blah, 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 because they can kind of edit you however they like. You're kind of in their hands. You've done your part, and they can edit you however you like. So it was a bit nerve-wracking to watch it. I think the weirdest thing was and the hardest thing, actually, to be 17 and have the social media side of things, I did find challenging in many ways, because everyone has their own opinion, and they are entitled to share that opinion, but if that opinion is about you and is a negative opinion, it's not very nice to read it. And I knew that all the other contestants were doing the same. Everyone was kind of like, it's that temptation, when you know you can type your own name into Twitter and like hundreds of hits will come up instantly from that minute. It's really tempting to do it, but every time I would do it, I'd be like, why did I do that? Because I was, I guess, lucky in a way that 1 in, 19 out of 20 would be positive, but there's that one negative person, and they're always very extreme, and they're just like, I hate Martha, or she's got awful hair or terrible makeup or blah, 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 presuming things about me that aren't true, and all kinds of stuff. And as a 17-year-old, I found that really hurtful because I'd grown up with a lot of my life being on social media just as a normal 13, 14, 15-year-old with just my friends and family on there. And suddenly to have random strangers making these comments and assumptions and it really kind of wears you down. And knowing that anyone else can read them. And knowing that the other contestants were getting it, some of them in my series got it a lot worse than me, where like half would be negative or 3/4 would be negative, and everyone, it really kind of mounts up on you, and you're like, oh gosh, like everyone hates me, or whatever. But I found it difficult in that time actually, and one thing that was massively helpful to me was having a faith, because I knew that that was constant when I was in the tent, when I was at school, when I was at home, and in those moments where I'm just reading all these random anonymous people's opinion about me, like, you have to know where your identity is, and that's where a lot of other people were struggling, because they just were like, I don't know what to say, or I don't know how to believe it. But I remember talking to my friends and then being like, you don't listen to them, like don't even read it, because you know who you are. You're not who like Jim in his armchair in Cheshire says about your makeup. Like that doesn't make any difference to you, but you know that like your identity is in Jesus, that you like that's who you are. And I was like, I had to take a whole step back from it and go, actually, yeah, that is so much more important. And now, even now, I can still go on there and find things if I really look hard, but I have to just say that that's not important. Like, I don't live my life based on other people's opinion of me. Right. It's just not how we're designed to be. But it was a really challenging time, and I do everyone struggles with it a little bit. And
of course,
they've had Bake Off on in America for the last 2 years on Netflix, so it's kind of an ongoing thing. I thought it would just stop after 6 months or so, but it's been going on and on. But it's nicer now because people tend to only watch things they enjoy on Netflix.
Speaking of America, when my sister-in-law heard that you were coming to our church, she flipped out. In the American sense. It was so exciting when they told us they was going to America, because ours was the first series that they put out over there. And suddenly to have people across the globe, I found it weird having people across the country or even in my town come up to me in the street and say, hey Martha, I really liked your biscuit scene. And suddenly to have like emails from people in America, Australia, wherever they've seen it is amazing and really exciting. Yeah. You mentioned just a little bit ago in dealing with social media and criticism and stuff, how much your faith, how much identity in Jesus, I think you said. What do you mean? What does it mean to have your identity be in Jesus?
I guess I've grown up in a church, but my parents were always very strongly opinionated in the fact that they wanted me and my sister to make that decision for ourselves. They didn't want us to just kind of blindly walk into faith and feel like we had to stay. They're like, no, if this is going to be your faith in your life, then you need to make that decision for yourself. So we kind of grew up learning about a lot of things. And then when I was about 13, I got baptized and I decided that actually this is for me. And I really do believe that what the Bible says is true and that it's true for me now. It's not just a book for the past.
Right.
And I've just found, especially through all the experiences I've had now, that God has been so faithful to me and so good to me for every time that I've kind of gone, actually, this is difficult, and had to pray about things. And I'll probably talk about it a little bit later on about how I've seen so much stuff happen since Bake Off, through praying and through being a Christian. It's been really exciting.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, post Bake Off, you are now... there's a blue check mark next to your name on Twitter.
I know.
That's pretty big.
That was a weird morning.
Yeah. What have you been up to since then?
It's been almost an incredible 3 years. I mean, when I was on the show, I knew that I got to the quarterfinals, which I was really proud of, but I knew that I didn't win. So I was like, well, that was really good fun, but that's probably it for me. I really enjoyed it. I don't know how I'll be received, but I wasn't in the final, I didn't win, so that's totally cool. I really enjoyed it. I'll probably go to uni and do all this stuff that I was planning on doing anyway. But somebody had other ideas, because everything that's happened since has just been more than I could ever have expected or asked for. And I've always dreamed of working in food. My original plan was to go to university and study food science and then maybe work in product development or recipe development. And then I feel like I've kind of taken a completely different path to getting to that point, but through working with Waitrose and working on books and stuff. If you told me when I was like 15 that I would have written my own recipe book, I would have completely laughed and said that's a complete that's not true. Like, how on earth could that
Yeah.
ever happen?
Yeah.
Because that would have been my lifelong dream, and it is probably my lifelong dream. It was crazy when I found that option open to me, and all the things I've been able to do, working with charities, doing loads of stuff, and to still be really busy now doing all the baking side of things. It's kind of like the dream job, and I'm really, really blessed to have that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. How does baking and I guess your faith, like, do they intersect at all? Are they separate things? What does it look like for you?
Yeah, I guess the physical baking side of things, I love kind of sharing what I make. People often ask me, like, how do you kind of just not become enormous with baking all day and testing recipes and all this stuff? And I find that sharing what I make, I love to, like, share what I make with other people. I find hospitality really important. Like, you can really get to know people over food, and it's even what it says in the Bible, like, to meet people, and Jesus is always eating with people, sharing food with people, and I think that's a really important part. But I guess for me, they're, I guess, a tiny bit separate in the way that baking is more of a physical thing. But yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
And
kind
you're
of lost
involved-
track of the original question. You just
No, just a
carry
bit
on
about
talking.
how baking and faith for you work together. But and you're involved with Tear Fund. Is that true?
I am, yeah. So I got involved. I knew when I was on the show that there was a massively important thing that I didn't just want to be. I knew that it was going to be aired to millions of people, which is still a weird thing to say. And I just thought, I don't want to just use this all as like for my own glory, as like, oh, I'm so great at baking, like everyone look at me. I was like, that's not what this is about for me at all. And I really wanted to use it to kind of highlight the things I'm really passionate about. And something that I've always really cared deeply about is human trafficking and the incredible damage that causes to people's lives, and how I just don't think that should exist in the world today. So I kind of was thinking after Bake Off, and actually was praying that I would find a way to share my faith and to kind of work with people who've experienced human trafficking,
Right.
and how it would work with baking. And I remember in the middle of filming the Bake Off, there's a festival that happens kind of quite near here called Big Church Day Out. And I'd been to that a couple of times with my friend, and this year we'd said, well, it was 3 years ago, but we said we would volunteer at the festival. We're going to like work on the merchandise team, and I was like, yeah, it's fine. And then Bake Off came along, and it was right in the middle of week 6 and 7. I said to her, I was like, oh, don't worry, like I'm not going to be in it by then, so we can still go. It'll be fine. And then week 6 came along, and I was still in, and my parents were like, you really shouldn't go. Like, you should practice. And I was like, oh, I've told my friend that we'll do this. She's not going to go on her own. And I really feel like I should go. But on the way there, I was kind of exhausted, stressed, revising. All these things were happening all at once. And I remember just praying, like, God, I pray that you just show me what this means. Like, what am I doing? I feel like I'm not comfortable. I'm not sure what this all leads to. What's the point of this? And I just pray you'll show me how this is going to work. And in one of our breaks over the weekend, we had a couple of little kind of 10, 15-minute breaks from our volunteer work. And we'd gone and just had a cup of tea. And we were sat outside, unbeknown to us, the Tear Fund tea tent, which is like a really big kind of marquee at the festival. And then this guy came out of the tent to one of the stages, which was just a small one, and we happened to be just in front of it, and started talking about how he was a baker. And I looked up and I recognized him, and he was Tom Herbert, who's one of the fabulous Baker Brothers, does a show on Channel 4, and I loved watching it. I loved him as a chef and as a baker. I thought he was amazing. And suddenly he was standing there in front of the Tear Fund tent saying, oh, I'm a baker, and I've been working with Tear Fund to help them, their project at the moment, which is on human trafficking. And my friend just looked at me and she was like, I'm pretty sure that's what you prayed for on the way here, is that you would find a way to use these things. And suddenly there was literally somebody standing in front of me kind of emulating exactly what I would like to do. And she said to me, I bet you next year this will be you. And she was right. Because the year after, that was me doing that same talk. But I phoned up Tear Fund about 2 weeks after, and Tear Fund, for anyone who don't know, are a really big kind of Christian aid giving charity, but they also work in kind of rehabilitation, and they work in loads of different projects to help relieve poverty. And they've just it's been a really incredible adventure. I was able to go on a trip with them to Cambodia to go and see their work firsthand, and yeah, I saw some horrible things, but also some amazing hope in the work that they're doing out there. So that's been a wonderful thing, I feel like, that I've been able to do. And if none of the other stuff had happened, like I hadn't written a book, I hadn't done anything with Waitrose, that would still be like the best thing for me, is being able to work with them.
Right. And you were teaching people there kind of how to bake
a
bit for themselves, is that right?
Yeah, so we went over, and one of the best ways of preventing trafficking is through skills education. And I'd kind of, before I'd been outward to everyone. I'd always assumed that trafficking was more of like a kidnapping situation or a taking situation, but it's actually a lot more deceptive than people think. If you're poverty-stricken, living in a small village, and somebody comes into your village kind of posed as a businessman, they've all got huge families and they can't often afford to feed all of their children. And suddenly there's somebody comes in and says, oh, I've got these great jobs in the city. If you let them come with me, we'll give you some money. They'll send money back. Like, their opportunities will be increased. And it just seems a bit win-win for families and for traffickers. Like, they're like, it doesn't seem sinister in any way. But as soon as families are educated that actually if you let your child go with these people, you'll probably never see them again, and you're putting them in danger. Like, no parent wants that for their child. So as soon as I find it ridiculous how simple it is to literally inform, if there's an organisation on the ground informing what would happen if this situation arises, then it nips it straight in the bud and it stops it from happening. But another way that is really useful is skills education and equipping young people with skills so they're valuable to their communities. Because as soon as they can generate their own income, they're not going to look for work in the city, and they're less likely to be deceived, which is amazing. So we were looking at sewing projects and agricultural projects, and we did a little bit of a cooking project as well, just teaching how to make a little thing called funnel cakes, which are like a little fried snack that they might be able to make on the side of the road and sell for a profit. And that was only a really small thing that I was doing whilst I was out there, but the work that they continue to do, kind of restoring families and keeping communities together, was really incredible to see.
Wow. So that sounds like that's quite an impacting experience for you.
Yeah, I mean, I went about 2 years ago, and every day I still think about it. We saw some awful things. We went to the red light district first to look at the horrific end point of trafficking, and then I just didn't think it could get any better from that, seeing young girls out on the street. I thought, how can this situation be solved? How can it be improved? Like, why is this happening to these people? But then to see the hope and the joy and the real change that was happening on the other end of it was amazing.
Amazing. You talked earlier about, so you grew up in a Christian family, but your parents didn't kind of force you to go or anything like that. I mean, what is it for you? Why did you decide to be a Christian?
I think what I really wanted to find out was I was a science student at school. I loved science and maths, and a lot of my friends were like, well, you can't love science and be a Christian at the same time. And I just thought, I don't think that's true. So I set out to find out why that wasn't true. And looking at all the evidence and finding historical things that back up the Bible, I want everyone to know that my faith isn't just blind, like I wasn't just like born into it and have just kind of continued on that treadmill. I really researched into this and found that actually the Bible is backed up in many places. And then when I read the Bible and when you read the fact that it all kind of boils down to, is Jesus the Son of God, and did he die and did he rise again? And I remember when I looked into that and read a few really helpful things, some from a guy called Andrew Wilson, who is a really fantastic theologian, and I found his work really interesting to read. And I went to a seminar by him, and he was just talking about kind of, if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, then what? And I found that really fascinating, and it convinced me that, if I believe that Jesus rose from the dead, then he says he's the Son of God, and then he's kind of fulfilled what's written in the Bible, then I believe this book to be true, and that's why I apply it to my life, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay, so kind of the evidence in some ways for Jesus' resurrection, which he claimed beforehand he would do. So it adds a lot of credibility to him.
Yeah, I think that's what I was looking for. I mean, because I grew up and I find school is a tough place to be and a tough place to be a Christian these days, because whilst we live in a society where it's almost okay to have lots of opinions, actually having a strong opinion about something, people are like, oh, no, like you can't be that sure. But for me, like, this is my faith, and it's not just my faith, it's what's true for me. And I don't think that something can be true for one person, not true for others. Truth is truth. And I just remember reading this and praying through it and just thinking, if Jesus rose from the dead, then that's supernatural, and that just doesn't happen. So if he's claiming to be this and he's done that, then that's what I looked into, and that's what I believe to be true.
Okay, so you've looked into the evidence, and we'll talk about some possibilities for if you would like to look into that kind of evidence yourself in a bit. What difference has he made personally for you? You mentioned kind of your identity and dealing with the criticism, but yeah, what is the impact he's had for you?
I think one of the most amazing things that has reassured, well, that being a Christian really reassured me, and kind of I felt like God has taken me down this path of being more in the media and being more of a kind of public figure, was that when I was about 15, I went to a big Christian family festival called West Point, and they had youth meetings there. Mm-hmm. And the guy that was speaking or preaching at the front sometimes has like prophetic words from God where he feels like God is saying something over a person. And there was about 300 of us in that room. And I was sat in the middle, and he pointed at me and was like, "Santa, I feel like God's saying this to you." And he said, "You're going to walk on a path which is different from everyone in this room. And it might be a little lonely, but it's going to be exciting. And where you walk, you will evangelize, and the Holy Spirit will be with you." And I just remember being like, I don't know what to make of this. This is not me. I wasn't a shy 15-year-old, but I was a Christian, but I wasn't like shouting at everyone in the playground that I was a Christian. I was much more inward, and my friends knew, but I wasn't telling everyone. And I was very set in my plans. I was unusual again as a 15-year-old. I knew that I wanted to go to this university. I wanted to go to Nottingham University. I wanted to study food science. I needed these A-levels, and I was going to study these A-levels at sixth form. I needed these grades at GCSE. So I knew exactly where I wanted to go with my life, and I thought I knew exactly what I would do. And it was kind of just kind of God saying, no, like, this is, like, I have this plan for you. So I kind of just put that to the back of my head, my whole, like, walking on different paths. I remember looking around and thinking, everyone in this room will probably go to uni, and I wanted to do that. And I felt a bit like, oh gosh, like, what's this going to be? What does this mean for me? But I kind of put that to the back of my mind, and then 2 years later, found myself in Welford Park, outside the Bake-Off tent, kind of week 5 or 6. I just remember sitting there and being like, all my friends right now are in a maths exam and prepping for other exams or whatever, and I'm here, and this is a real start of something brand new and scary and different. And it was that moment where I just felt so reassured. I was like, actually, this is amazing. This kind of falls into place, and just having that word and knowing that God is in control of my life. Even if I hadn't have had that word, I still feel like I'd be confident, but that just made me so reassured that this is meant for me, and I'm not just kind of wandering aimlessly in life.
Yeah. God has a plan and a purpose.
Yeah, because
for you.
this is scary. I mean, I would, if someone had said to me that I would be talking in front of however many people are in this room about my faith, I would be completely like, no, not me. That's somebody else, it's not me.
Yeah.
So I've learned a lot, and it's been exciting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're really glad you did Bake Off and that you're here with us, now. It's great. It's great. In a bit, we're going to be looking at Martha in the Bible, and it's quite remarkable because obviously Martha and baking, and this Martha also.
I know my parents were quite like, oh, wow.
Yeah,
this worked well.
Also, kind of in the kitchen, got some cooking skills clearly. I guess. What would you say? You are 21, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You've written 2 cookbooks. You've been on TV. Been to Cambodia, doing this with Tear Fund. You've done a lot already in your life. I guess. Why have faith? Why be a Christian? Why church even? You've got a lot in your life already.
Yeah, I think church. If you're a Christian, it says in the Bible that church is an amazingly helpful place to be surrounded by other Christians, to build each other up, and to learn more, to look into and ask questions and have a healthy conversation. And I found church to be incredibly helpful. I've actually just moved to a new church, so I've just moved house, and it's just getting stuck in and immediately finding that community of people who are interested in me and don't just see Bake Off Martha. They look beyond and they find out more about me as a person, and they care about the ins and outs of my life, which you don't find in many other places. And I just think if faith is new to you, or you're not a Christian and you think that it's discreditable or whatever, if there's a 1% chance, this is what I always say to my non-Christian friends, there's a 1% chance that what I believe could be the truth, then it's definitely worth looking into, because this is what I base my whole life around. And I wouldn't say that I'm stupid or that I'm crazy or that I've been brainwashed. This is something that I've really looked into and really do believe strongly. And I say to them, like, you've seen how I live my life, and if there's a 1% chance that what I believe is the truth, because it has real consequences, then look into it, go to church, ask questions. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. I help out on the catering team at an Alpha course at my new church, and I find that an incredibly useful place just to get kind of the stigma out of the way and just ask, because this is serious.
That must be a delicious Alpha course also as well. Yeah.
Well, if you fancy coming down to Brighton.
Yeah, it's tempting just for that, really. Martha, it is such a pleasure having you here, and she's not running away. She is going to be around to sign books afterwards. But thank you so much for joining us and for sharing all this. You can stay there, but let's give a hand for Martha.
Thanks.
We're now going to have a 10-minute break for which you can get some more snacks, get some more drinks, go to the loo if you want to. If you want to get Martha's cookbook for autographs later, go for it, or cookbooks. Go for it. And at 25 past, there'll be a short talk looking at Martha in the Bible and what it might have to say for us and the similarities with Martha, who is here. So do enjoy 10 minutes at 25 past. I'll bring us back. Thank you.
It's strange on the wrong side of town. It's great, but why can't anybody smile a little? Everybody frowns, excuse the lack of sleep. See, I've been driving back and forth a lot when nobody's around, 'cause it's strange on the wrong side of town. Guess I'll be leaving now. Turn around, don't fake it now. Something really knocked you down after 20 feet. Slow it down, get your feet back on the ground. But coming back is never easy when you don't know where you've been. It's great in this familiar town. It's strange, 'cause it's like nothing ever changed, but something has, I don't know how. It's a point of view. I guess the grass is always greener when you're wanting something new. But it's great in this familiar town, at least for now. Turn around, no faking now. Something really knocks you down after 20 feet. Turn it down, get your feet back on the ground. But coming back is never easy when you don't know where you've been. Turn around, no faking now. Something really knocked you down after 20 feet. Slow back on the ground. But coming back is never easy, so turn around, don't fake it now. Something really knocks you down after 20 feet. Slow it down, get your feet back on the ground. Coming back is never easy when you don't know where you've been. There is no greater love than that which God has shown by sending His own Son. He chose to leave His throne. He went up to the cross. He died for you and me, that we would be with Him, sharing eternity. What God is this? How glorious is He, who reigns in heaven forever. What perfect love, what sacrifice. Jesus gave Himself for me. Yes, Jesus gave Himself for me. There is no other path that leads us to our home, that brings us to our King, to stand before His throne. And one day we'll arrive, and there will be no doubt that Jesus Christ is Lord. And every knee will bow. What God is this? How glorious is He, who reigns in heaven forever. What perfect love, what sacrifice. Jesus gave Himself for me. Yes, Jesus gave Himself for me. Death, where is your sting? Swallowed up in victory. The grave could not contain our God. Jesus Christ, the risen one. Death, where is your sting? Swallowed up in victory. The grave could not contain our God. Jesus Christ, the risen one. What God is this? How glorious is He, who reigns in heaven forever. What perfect love, what sacrifice. Jesus gave Himself for me. What God is this? How glorious is He, who reigns in heaven forever. What perfect love, what sacrifice. Jesus gave Himself for me. Yes, Jesus gave Himself for me. How glorious is He who reigns in it forever. What perfect love, what sacrifice. Jesus gave Himself for me. Yes, Jesus gave Himself for me.
Well, if I can invite you to come on back in, I think many people are trying to get their hands on some books. Do come in, do grab a seat. It's been great hearing some of Martha's story. It's been great hearing about Bake Off and all that God has been doing in her life since as well. And I want to briefly share with you the story of Martha in the Bible. It's a very short story, but I think it has a lot to say and speaks a lot to what Martha was saying about identity and who we are. So this is from Luke's Gospel. It's in the New Testament in the Bible. And it says this: As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you're worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." So we have this scene. Martha in the Bible, Martha, has opened her home to Jesus and his disciples. So basically, she's opened her home to at least 13 hungry men, it would seem, for lunch. So Martha owns a home, and yeah, she must be pretty confident in cooking a meal, a bit like Martha Collison. And the story at first glance seems a bit tough on Martha, doesn't it? You know, she's working, she's got a lot of work to do, she's being a host, and Mary's not helping. But it's kind of Mary who's painted slightly in the better picture. What's going on? Why is Martha distracted, worried, and upset, as she's described? What's going on? Someone had to prepare the meal, after all, and Martha's the host. I think we can see what's going on from what Martha says and what Jesus says back to her. Martha's scurrying about, trying to get things ready. She's got guests. Jesus is there. Mary is sitting at Jesus' feet. And Martha says, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." And Jesus' response is, "Martha, Martha, you're worried and upset about many things. You're worried and upset about many things. Martha could have said, hey, Mary, can you help out? Or, do you mind Jesus talking loudly so we can both do stuff while you visit? But no, she comes in straight with, don't you care? And Jesus is saying, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things. It's not just, that Martha shouldn't have been preparing a meal. Of course she's being a great host, so of course she should be. But it's the state of her heart. She's worried and upset. She's distracted as Jesus sits there. Mary, if you switch the sisters, Mary could have been doing the preparation and Martha sitting at Jesus' feet. And I think Martha would have been thinking about all the preparation that needs to be done and worrying and stressing anyway. And Mary could have been doing all the preparations and enjoying Jesus' company still. And notice it says Jesus came to visit, and then it said Mary sat at the Lord's feet. Martha mentioned this earlier, but the key claim of Jesus is that he is God revealed to us. If we want to know what God is like, what his character is like, we can know because we can look at Jesus. What is Jesus like? That's what God is like. And that's why they call him Lord, King. But Martha's heart is distracted. Martha has got her priorities maybe mixed up. See, the Bible teaches that we were created to love God, to have a relationship with God, and to love him with our whole hearts and souls and minds and strength, and to love other people as we love ourselves. But Martha's got it mixed up. She's got God, Jesus, sitting in her living room, and she's too stressed out about the preparations. And she boils over. She snaps a bit at Jesus and at Mary. Running around doing things which are good, they're very good. It's good to practice hospitality. It's a great thing to cook. But they're not to be God in your life. And that, ultimately, is what this word sin is in the Bible. It's a condition of the heart. One person put it like this: the heart of the human problem is the problem of the human heart. It's not some list of bad things. Don't do that, don't steal, don't kill, all that. It's turning away from God and his love and living for other things ruling in your heart, not Jesus. And this often happens, being worried, being distracted, being upset, when we feel insecure. When we feel insecure, when our identity isn't set in something that can hold it. Maybe we're chasing things that will be taken away from us. You see what Jesus said at the end. He said, Martha, you're worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed, only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what's better, and it will not be taken away from her. You see, he's suggesting it will not be taken away from her. In other words, Martha, you're putting your hope in things that can and will be taken away from you. We often get wrapped up and our minds focused on the day-to-day things, the next YouTube video, the next task on our list. We put our identity in things like, I am what I do, or I am what I have, or I am what I wear, or I am what I eat, or I am who I know. In Martha's case, maybe it was, I am an excellent host. But these things change and can be changed, even if we don't want them to. These things are not secure. I wonder for you, what do you need? What is your identity in? a pastor from the States who's also a bit of a poet named Jefferson Bethke wrote this poem. So the question, what's on your throne? What do you chase so you don't feel alone? So what defines you? What do you give ultimate worth? And what, if taken, will bring ultimate hurt? Now see, that is your God. And all of us, we sacrifice deep joy for shallow happiness. To be honest, we look like fools. We look like grown adults in the kiddie pool going, oh my goodness, this is like so cool. Because we're slaves to our possessions. We're always craving something new. Reality check, if you can't give it up, you don't own it. It owns you. If you can't give it up, you don't own it. It owns you. And so Martha is running around high on stress and maybe a bit of self-righteous anger at Jesus and Mary. They're sitting there while she slaves away and missing the fact that her creator and the lover of her soul is sitting in the living room, wanting to be with her, to know her, to spend time together. Martha, you're upset and worried about many things, but few things are needed. I wonder, what do you need? Or what do you think you need? Martha was distracted. She was worried and upset. And she asked Jesus, do you even care? And to be honest, when we're stretched and feeling a bit stressed, often what is kind of on our hearts comes out. It boils over, doesn't it, sometimes, when you feel just a bit too far stretched. And this is Martha's question. Don't you care? Do you even care? That's a question I've been asked many times. And to be honest, I've asked many times, does God care? Does he? Does he care about my life? Does he care about your life? Does he care? Well, Martha's here tonight, and I'm here tonight to say not only that God cares about your life, but that he cares enough that he would go to his death for you, that he would go to a cross for you, as Martha was talking about earlier. All these other things we could place our identity, we could put our hope in, that can distract us in life, all these other things, they ultimately lead to death. They don't last, and they take us with them, slowly but surely. And the message we find from Jesus is that we have turned our backs on God. We spend so much time, say, looking at our iPhones, and we don't give him the time of the day, though he's sitting there right in front of us. In fact, if anyone was to boil over in this story, maybe it should have been Jesus. If anyone was to boil over or to snap a bit, maybe it should be God. After all, we're the ones who've turned away from him. We're the ones who act like he doesn't exist. Maybe if someone was to boil over, it should be God, each one of us. When Martha was stretched to a breaking point, she said, Jesus, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me. But when Jesus was nailed to a cross, a terrible way to die, he took our rebellion, he took our mess, he took all the times we've turned our backs on him or even spat in his face. He took the punishment we deserve on himself. And as he died, the sin died with him. And when Jesus, in this terrible stretching moment, probably the most terrible moment a human being could go through, physically and emotionally, and also spiritually, as he took all of our mess on himself, as he took the punishment we deserve, when he was pushed to his limit, he said, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. This is the God I've come to know. Even then, his thoughts were on us. Even then, his thoughts were for you. This is the God who cares. This is the God offering you a new identity, an imperishable identity, an identity in him. The amazing thing Martha was sharing with us earlier about an identity in Jesus, if we put our trust in him, that he took our sin, the way we've broken our relationship with God, if we put our trust in him, if we live for him, we become adopted into God's family. We become seen with Jesus' goodness. And that's an identity that cannot be taken away from you. Nothing can, not even death itself. It's not at all anything in what we have done. Therefore, we also can't just scrap it away, nor can anyone else in this world, or anything that happens to us, nor all the negative comments Martha got on social media, even if she'd lost in the first round of Bake Off. Her identity would still be in Jesus, his love, what he has done, that she's a daughter of God, that I am a son of God, that you're a child of the King. And even better, though Jesus died on a cross for us, the message, as Martha was sharing, is that he rose from the dead. And Jesus actually said beforehand, over and over, that he was going to be crucified and that he would rise from the dead, defeating death. And I want to encourage you, there's lots of ways and lots of resources out there to investigate for yourself if Jesus really did rise from the dead. It's an extraordinary claim, but there's an extraordinary lot of evidence for it. I've become convinced of its truth. Martha's become convinced of its truth. He rose from the dead. And what that means is not only does it confirm what he said would happen, and confirm that if it's true, that he really is the Son of God, but it also means that your identity in him, if you put your trust in him, can't even be taken away by death itself. As a Christian, you can know death has been defeated. We have hope, not only in this life, but for forever. We don't have to fear it all ending. I don't have to fear letting go of anything in this life because Jesus has defeated death. So I want to invite you in just this next minute to stop like Mary and to look at Jesus. There's many things that can distract us, many things that worry us, many things going on in life. But have you ever taken time to stop and look at Jesus? Who do you say he is? He makes a pretty big claim even here in this passage about himself, who he thinks he is. Jesus was right there in the living room with Mary and with Martha. And I fully believe Jesus is right here tonight. And he's inviting you to choose him, to know him, to follow him. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you're worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed, only one. What is this one thing that's needed? Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. See, Jesus is making an extraordinary claim that he is that one thing that is needed. Jesus says at another point that he is the bread of life. The bread of life. He wasn't just saying, a nice thing we watch a show about where people compete to make, or a nice thing that's nice to have sometimes. No, he was speaking to a culture in which bread was your existence was life. He's saying, I am the most crucial thing to a real life. More so than anything else. If you've got me, you've got everything you need. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. I wonder what you will choose in life. What will you choose? Few things are needed. Indeed, only one. The poem I was reading earlier continues on. It says, am I the only one who's felt the gnawing within? Am I the only one who's felt the weight of my own sin? But see, here's what's unique, so go ahead and critique. But if you hear anything, hear this one thing that I speak. Where we exchanged ourselves for God, thinking we could be him, he exchanged himself for us, absorbing all our sin. God literally put on flesh, and do you see how we treated him? The ultimate war veteran, because he was killed for our freedom. Nonetheless, he was thinking of you and me, with every whip that beat him, knowing full well we'd still go, nah, I don't really need him. But like a father who couldn't bear his children to not be free, so he thought up that tree, paid our fee for specks of dirt like you and me. So my plea is let him restore his proper place. I promise you he loves you right now. Just trust in his grace. Because before I leave, I'll leave you with this. What are those other things took nails in their wrists? Or when was the last time money or sex forgave you? When's the last time your boyfriend set you free from all that's enslaved you? See, what else died so that you could be made new? Or when was the last time the world promised satisfaction and actually came through? The invitation of Jesus is to accept what he has done for you on the cross. His forgiveness, a restored relationship with God, and that he comes into your life. Your identity becomes that of a child of God, fixed and secure, not because of what you've done, but what God has done for you. There might be many reactions to that in this room, but as I close, I want to invite you to respond in some way. You might be thinking, I think this just sounds bizarre, or I disagree with this, in which case I'm really glad you're here, and I'd love to discuss that with you, to talk to you about it. I'm sure Martha would too. I'd also really love to invite you to try Jesus the Game Changer. It's a course we're going to be running starting on the 2nd of November in Metrics, one of the coffee shops in town. It's a chance to have a meal with other people who are investigating, who are questioning, to watch a video from different experts from around the world, what they think about Jesus and his impact on life and on the world, and then to ask your questions. No matter how tough or how strange your question might be, you're welcome there. It's a place to investigate and to explore, and I would highly recommend it. I've done a similar course in the past, and I found it really helpful. You'd be very welcome there, even if you were not a Christian. Please do give it a thought, give it a try, and there are flyers on the tables. Or maybe you're interested, but you just want to explore more. Maybe you want to investigate the evidence for Jesus' resurrection. Well, we do have books out in the lounge. We would love for you to grab one with different evidence. I'd also love to chat with you, and maybe you'd like to do this course as well, where you can look at the evidence for Jesus, for his resurrection. It would be a real shame, as Martha said, if this is true, to never even investigate it, never to look into what Jesus is claiming. And maybe for you, you are thinking, yeah, I've been coming the last few nights, or I've been coming for a while, and I think this is true for me. I'd like to do something about that. In which case, I'm going to pray a short prayer. And there's nothing, this is not any sort of emotional manipulation. This is a prayer for if you think this is true, that you can pray to invite Jesus into your life. I do believe he is alive, that you can find forgiveness and new life and a new identity, even tonight in Jesus. So I'm going to pray, and if you want to repeat this prayer in your own hearts, please do. If you don't want to pray, that's okay. Just honor the moment for those who do. Let's pray. Father, I'm sorry that I've run after other things and turned my back on your love. Thank you for Jesus and that he died for me so I can be forgiven. Please come into my life. I want to live in the freedom of life with you, which cannot be taken away. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, thank you so much for listening to me. And if you did pray that prayer, or if you would like to investigate further, or maybe you'd like some materials to begin your own investigation, please do come talk to me. We're going to have some more live music, and Martha's going to be around to sign books and to chat. And tomorrow night, we have John Bryant, a professor of biosciences from Exeter University and an expert in bioethics. If you have questions, like Martha was talking about science and faith, and how can you be a scientist and believe the Bible, then why not come tomorrow night as well and get your questions answered from a scientist? And thank you so much for coming, and please do enjoy your evening.